People always think early humans had to worry about prehistoric animals. But really, they had to worry about us. So here's 6 extinct animals you could have eaten if you were born early enough. Starting with this guy. Mammoths were basically the cosmic brownies of prehistoric life. One kill meant shelter, clothing, and enough meat to feed your whole group for weeks. But getting one wasn't easy, so we had to get clever. You don't kill a mammoth by overpowering it. You kill it by never stopping. We tracked them for hours, sometimes days. Every time they'd stop to rest, we'd still be there. So no matter how far they ran, they'd turn around and see us again. Until eventually, their bodies just gave out. And then we walked up and finished the job. That's called persistence hunting. But that wasn't even the only way we'd take mammoths down. In Mexico, people dug shallow pits mammoths would fall into. Others used arrows. Some even made them jump off cliffs. And technically, you can still eat mammoth today. And the one guy that actually dug it out of the permafrost and tried it said it tasted like freezer burnt beef jerky, which honestly still beats eating baby mammoth brains, because that happened too. We found baby skulls with cracks that suggest Neanderthals were going after the brain. But the real gross part is, they probably ate it raw. It's also highly likely we ate the Neanderthals themselves. Not because we wanted to, hopefully, but probably out of starvation. In one cave, researchers found Neanderthal bones with the same marks we leave behind when we butcher animals. We don't know exactly what went down, or if it was even humans that did it, but somewhere out there was probably at least one guy who became the Jeffrey Dahmer of the Ice Age. But not every extinct animal would have put up a fight. Meet the dodo. A few million years ago, some pigeons were flying across the Indian Ocean and landed on the island of Mauritius, a place with literally 0 predators. In the meantime, those pigeons got big. Reaching about 3 feet tall, they became one of the largest animals on the island. And with nothing around to threaten them, they pretty much lost the ability to feel fear. They just didn't need it to survive anymore. But that's still probably how they got their name. Portuguese sailors might have called them dodo, meaning fool. Or maybe they got their name from their call, which apparently sounded like this. Either way, they were easy to catch, which is about the only reason anyone ate them, because apparently they tasted horribly. Historical accounts describe their meat as tough, greasy, and bitter. They were so bad that early visitors to the island would often ignore the birds entirely and go after the giant tortoises instead. And contrary to popular belief, humans didn't wipe them out either. The dodo was probably doomed from the start. Hear me out. They couldn't fly, so they laid 1 large egg on the ground per year, basically serving them up on a platter. Because when humans brought the first predators, like pigs, rats, and pet monkeys to the island, it was game over. Their eggs were too easy to find, and with no backups, just one bad breeding season can destroy an entire generation. That's why in just 60 years after their discovery, the dodo, once numbering in the thousands, was gone. Short little intermission here, fellas. If you want to support the channel, I just dropped some merch to celebrate 100,000 subscribers. These hats are limited time, so if you grab one now, I'll know that you're an OG if I see you with one in the future. But I've also got shirts too, if hats aren't your thing. Only grab one if you're in the right spot financially. Just watching means just as much. But go check that out at jhaunted.com. And anyways, back to the video. But if we look at another island to the west of Mauritius, we'll find a similar story, except on steroids in every way possible. This is Madagascar, a giant island that has been completely isolated since even before the dinosaurs went extinct. And if this channel has taught you anything, it's that isolation equals weird animals. Its long separation created a truly bizarre array of giants. Among them was a massive eagle, so fearsome that even today, some lemurs still have a warning call for it, even though it's been extinct for centuries. But the real monster was even bigger. In fact, it was the heaviest bird to have ever lived and among the tallest. This was the elephant bird, the giant of Madagascar. And weirdly, its closest living relative is the kiwi that lives over 6,500 miles away. But unlike that tiny bird, a single kick from this thing would almost certainly kill you. So how did ancient humans ever get near them? Well, for most of the 9,000 years we lived together, we weren't hunting the bird itself. We were actually going after its giant eggs. The largest single eggs laid by any vertebrate, living or extinct. That includes gargantuan animals like the sauropods. So these giant eggs were a prime food source, with large numbers of eggshells having been discovered alongside ancient human fires. This means humans would have been cooking up, quite literally, the largest omelets known to man. I like to picture them stealing eggs like that one game mode from Conker's Bad Fur Day. And if you've ever played that, me and you are automatically friends. But despite that long coexistence, these animals eventually went extinct 1,000 years ago. Their demise was ultimately a result of snatching too many eggs and wrecking their habitat. But that isn't the only giant creature our ancestors ate into extinction. Meet the Steller sea cow, the largest sirenian to ever exist. Sirenians are the family that includes manatees and dugongs. Their biggest living member today reaches about 13 feet and 3,500 pounds. The Steller sea cow, it could grow up to 30 feet long and weigh 20,000 pounds. That's like comparing an average human to someone 12 feet tall and 5 times heavier. So the Steller sea cow was a true giant among its peers. They're also one of the more recently discovered, at least by Western science, in 1741, when shipwrecked explorers in the Bering Sea found these massive docile sea cows. And here's the thing, they were too buoyant to fully submerge, so part of their body was always sticking out of the water. And since they fed in shallow kelp forests right near shore, that made them incredibly easy to hunt. So they quickly became the next victim to nature's worst enemy, the pointy stick. To make it worse, they were extremely social. When one got attacked, the others would come to its defense, even going as far as ramming boats. But that just made them an easier target. Sorry if I made you cry. But on the bright side, we were kind of just the ones to finish them off. When we found them, there was maybe a few thousand left, hiding in the far corners of their range. And just 27 years after they were discovered, they were gone too. Okay, enough sad boy hours. Now let's talk about the last terrestrial crocodile that our ancestors also ate. When the dinosaurs died out, it wasn't mammals that instantly took over. Instead, it was giant land-dwelling crocodiles. However, they eventually got replaced, until only one remained on the island of New Caledonia. But unlike the other animals we've talked about so far, this island didn't make it a giant. Instead, it was relatively small, at only about 6 feet long, an example of a phenomenon known as island dwarfism. Side tangent here, but that's also where we get the idea of the Cyclops, from the remains of a dwarf mammoth found on the island of Crete. Okay, now back to the crocodile. This animal is known as Megafauna inexpectedus, quite literally named that because ain't nobody expected to find a terrestrial crocodile on some random island when they're supposed to be extinct. But this isn't the only weird thing about the animal, because while you usually think of crocodiles as carnivores, Megafauna was probably omnivorous. But when humans arrived on the island 3,000 years ago, suddenly we start finding croc bones in ancient trash pits. Now we're not 100% sure if we were eating them, or if they're just a crocodile version of a raccoon digging through our trash. Maybe it was both. But now it's time to meet the biggest marsupial to ever waddle the earth, Diprotodon. It was basically a wombat that scaled up to the size of an SUV, standing taller than a man and weighing as much as a Jeep Wrangler. Well, the males at least, since they probably lived in groups consisting of a few smaller females and one Chad-sized dominant male. They likely communicated using deep grunting calls produced through their massive nasal cavities, which would have been important considering the amount of predators that were in their environment. Because even back then, humans weren't even close to the worst thing on the continent, because Australia has about 10,000 other ways to kill you. One of them was the marsupial lion, but the worst was probably Megalania, a giant venomous monitor lizard that grew over 20 feet long. So if you were Diprotodon, humans were just another item on the threat list. But a problem all the same. We showed up somewhere between 65 and 50,000 years ago, and not long after that, Diprotodon was gone. But how much of that was exactly our fault is still debated. But at Warattai Rock Shelter in South Australia, archaeologists found Diprotodon bones buried alongside human tools. And that wouldn't be strange, except that shelter is halfway up a mountain. So that means someone probably dragged it up there. But it's not like that one meal wiped them out, because around the same time, the environment was collapsing too. About 45,000 years ago, Australia started drying out. Nowhere shows this better than Lake Calabana. Well, this is how it used to look, because today, it's not much of a lake anymore. But thousands of years ago, it was a rich watering hole, a place that Diprotodons depended on, and as the water disappeared, they had to slog farther and farther just to reach what was left. And that's why the lake bed is littered with bones, a whole graveyard of Diprotodons that couldn't make it to the dwindling water supply. But that probably made our scavenging meals pretty easy. Now, if you could bring back any extinct animal just to eat, what would it be? And don't forget to check out jhona.com if you want to support the channel. In the meantime, YouTube thinks you'll like this video, and as always, thanks for watching, and jhona out.